Uh, Thank you, Chief Sayers, for joining us today. You were one of the first people I met when I came to Sault Ste. Marie, and the words you gave me at the time still stick with me. But I wanted to thank you for accepting our invitation to speak to us in advance of the Truth and Reconciliation Day. I brought an offering of tobacco with me, which I have to give to you virtually until I can see you in person. And that offering is our humble request to have your words to describe and to discuss the meaning of Truth and Reconciliation Day and advice for us going forward and how we can participate in that day. So I'm going to turn it over to David Thompson, who will continue the discussion.
Thanks, Peter. And even though we're doing this virtually, we still would like to acknowledge that here at the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center, we're presently in the Robinson Huron Treaty Territory, the land that is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg people. And today I'm joined here with Chief Sayers, virtually of Batchewana First Nations of Ojibways. So thank you, Chief Sayers, for taking the time out of I'm sure is a busy schedule for you to speak with us today. And we welcome your perspectives about the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in an effort to learn, to reflect, and to be active participants as an organization on September 30th. So welcome. So please start us off with any introductory comments that you may have, and feel free to bring your message for us today.
Anin Bojo Kinewea, Ongima Nemanagojin Guayakasat Dishnakaz, Chief Teen Sayers from Batchewana First Nation here in Bawating. I also have joining me today is our Communications Manager, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, good morning. I'm Alex Syrette. I'm from Batchewana First Nation as well, and it's nice to be here today. Miigwech.
Thank you, Alex. And I wanted to have the balance on this call. And in our culture, we try to be inclusive and provide different perspective in regards to how we perceive things, the lens we see things through. And it's always important to have that gender balance. And so I really thank Alex for making some time to have a discussion about the Day of for Truth and Reconciliation, which is a new holiday. And I appreciate the opportunity to have even a few minutes to share some of at least our perspective in regards to the relationship that we may have or wish to have with Canada. And it's nice to hear the acknowledgement that we commenced with. And from Batchewana's perspective, the acknowledgement is something that we find some appreciation for. However, when we look at an acknowledgement, it doesn't take us to the next step where we actually find a better place to land in our relationship as a result of the work that we do because of the acknowledgement. So we acknowledge, but what can we do to make us get a little closer to what the original relationship was supposed to look like? So what I've been encouraging a lot of organizations to do is, yes, do the acknowledgement, but at the same time, in the next breath, we should be saying, as a result of our acknowledgement that, yes, we're in the Robinson Huron Treaty Territory. Yes, the Anishinaabeg people are here before we were here. Yes, they still have a lot of insights and I guess information and perspective to share. As a result of this acknowledgement, we will work diligently to see that the reality, the truth that comes with this acknowledgement sees the light of day, and we will provide and develop plans that can move the yardstick. Where there are instances around unextinguished governance systems and they're not seeing the light of day, we will work with the Indigenous people to make sure that those types of information sets will take life, and we will help them, because those types of information sets can have a positive effect on climate change, on status of the water, the lands, and even overall provide some thought around governance systems or other systems that maybe have and can have a better impact on how we look after our mother, the earth. So there's, I think, when we look at acknowledgements, I think there has to be the next step now. We've been doing acknowledgements for a long time, but we have to evolve with that. And I think the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation is a natural evolution. But how do we populate that? And I'm hearing from other Indigenous leaders across the country that there seems to be a lack of parameters that came with the announcement around what do organizations do? Because it's more than just a day off. There actually should be markable, measurable types of events, and we should be able to, over time, see change as a result of this investment in a, I guess, an event that's meant to change how Canada deals with and resolves outstanding issues with Indigenous communities. Did you have anything you want to add on that, Alex? On anything or anything you want to make mention of?
I guess I just wanted to acknowledge the opportunity for everybody, that's First Nations and our Canadian neighbors, to take a day to do some reflection, and also for us to do some education. I know, Chief Sayers, you mentioned that you're going to be doing presentations at various organizations, and I hope that's how most of us plan on spending our day, is sharing our knowledge, educating one another, and taking time out to, like you said, acknowledge what this day is all about, and not just, you know, in a blind way, but in a way that moves that yardstick and creates some meaningful dialogue and outcomes.
Thank you. And yeah, we try to provide cross-cultural or Indigenous worldview information to organizations, schools, universities, colleges. I'm going to be having some discussions and presentations with the steelworkers on the 30th. I'm also meeting with the mayor, and we're going to be having some announcements and some narratives that we'll be sharing publicly that day. We are also inviting people to wear orange shirts to remember part of that history that didn't really align itself with how we envisioned the relationship to look as we evolved in a nation-to-nation relationship with the newcomers to our lands. So there's a lot of things that can and should and probably will be happening and maybe not happening, but I think we need to collectively, because when we first arrived on these lands, I mean, the newcomers first came here, we knew of their coming, and we recognized that this was inevitable, but we also recognized that we would share. We were going to enter into a sharing relationship. We had to be careful with how that looked, but we were going to share. That never really went quite as we had anticipated. But when we talk about sharing, we talk about sharing our worldview, sharing our way to live in harmony with this area, this part of Mother the Earth. We also talked about economic sharing. We also talked about our sharing of our governance systems and cooperating and understanding and respecting each other's governance systems. There was many things that were supposed to be shared as part of the spirit and intent of our relationship. So we never really went farther down that road than we initially agreed to. But as we look forward, we see where there is a lot of room that we have to fill with a new negotiated type of a relationship with the settlers. And the most recent federal election is a little bit of a window into the commitments that were made by Trudeau prior to this election, where things like fulfillment of treaty promises within the Robinson-Huron Treaty and the annuities will come to fruition. There was a commitment that Canada will provide all the cooperation needed to resolve the outstanding historical revenue sharing agreement with my people, and my people shouldn't be living in squalor, shouldn't be living in poverty, shouldn't be living in third world conditions in our villages. And that's going to change, but it comes with some, not only words, but it comes with commitment to plans and markable expectations that we can all look forward to, so that Canadians find more content with how their government and their political bodies are meeting their expectations. I hear all the time from Canadians, Ontario citizens, that they had no idea that there is this non-fulfillment of the promises to us. They think things are going okay with the promises that were made to us. They think that our people are feeling fulfilled with the relationship with the Crown and the Government of Canada in relation to the promises that were made. And that's so far from the truth. So I'm glad that things are starting to come out, and I'm glad the 215, and I think we're up closer to 10,000 remains that have been discovered. But those original 215 children that allowed themselves to be discovered, they allowed themselves to be discovered now because they know that we are at a place in our evolution between Indigenous people and the newcomers to our land. We're in this good place where we can see other things finding resolution because of them allowing themselves to be discovered. It's the precipice, it's the tip of the iceberg of the other things that also need to have attention, and how we're going to resolve and how we're going to live side by side. So we're all on this intentional timeline, and we're given these things so that we can populate and we can move forward and we can see a real important great change in how the relationship might look in the future. So I really think, how do we get there? I think we think from the lens of innovativeness. We need to be innovative. We need to think outside of the box and how we can move the yardstick and propel Indigenous quality of life to be equal with the quality of life with Canadians. Our life expectancy is at least a decade less than mainstream Canadians. 60-70% of the children in care are Indigenous kids. Jails are full of Indigenous people. It's just not where we need to be right now. And we don't have to be here in the future. We can create plans that can really see an equity. We shouldn't have to fight for, like, our officers have to work 5 years longer to be able to retire. And they're the same people, the same jobs as mainstream, but somehow, some way, there's a policy that requires our people that work in policing to work 5 years longer than mainstream before they can retire. Like, wouldn't that be an easy fix? Why do we have to go to the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal or to Ontario Human Rights? There are all these inequities. There's got to be ways of resolving these things so that we're treated as humans, and as humans having all these rights. So we're looking forward to a different course in the next little while. And we want to be able to spend time on celebrating our language. We want to be able to spend time on celebrating our ceremonies. We want to spend time on celebrating our unextinguished governance rights. We want to spend time on celebrating our children. We want to spend time on celebrating our elders and their knowledge. We have to put fires out before we can get there, and we have to provide foundational main education, quality of life components like housing and food and employment, so we can start to talk about those other things. We're just living in crisis. We're living in trauma. We're living in a grieving society amongst Indigenous people. So that's not going to define us. We don't want that to define us in the future. We are a nation. We still have everything that it is to be a nation. We still have our own lands. We still have our own land, our laws. We have our own people. We have our own spirituality. Everything that it is to be a nation is what we'd love to hold up and have our people feel good about, and Canadians to feel good about, that they're in a position to be able to complement, to restore, to show the rest of the world that there is this beautiful way of life that's still embraced on Turtle Island here. And it's appreciated by settlers, and it's appreciated by the newcomers. And we want to show that model to the rest of the world. It's such a beautiful opportunity that we have here. So this National Day of Truth and Reconciliation can move us a lot farther along in that yardstick and how we can get where we want to be with the original expectations that we had for each other. Alex, anything else, Alex?
I think you captured it all.
That's great. So, like you said, there is time for reflecting, and there's also this other piece of being active participants in this restorative process. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that maybe in the form of events going on this upcoming day of reconciliation that maybe some of our staff could be active participants in, and if not, maybe there could be opportunities to look at what we could do together through planning, like you said.
Yeah, there are things that can happen that would provide some motivation. And I'm thinking about walking on Whitefish Island, downtown Sault Ste. Marie, checking out the signage down there that paint a different perspective in regards to the history of the area. There's more to the history than the explorers coming across the first native person in the area, or them looking at all the fish and all the bounty of the lands here. There was things that were happening amongst our people in the area that also I think would be really interesting for people to understand. So looking at those historical plaques that we've put up and provide education, but there's also things like Miigwech University across the road from Algoma, where there's a teaching lodge that's being constructed that is something that we've always had amongst our people, and it's going to be constructed again. So there's places people can go on their own tours of the area and even go out on the land. Those are the kind of things we want, because it's not all contemporary mainstream industry economic type of perspectives that we want people to experience. Our world as the original peoples of these lands are based on our synchronicity with all of creation, being in proximity to the water, going for a walk up at Robertson Bluffs, at Robertson Cliffs, or harvesting different types of medicines. There are so many things that we can look towards that will provide the sensitization to a larger worldview than just the concrete and the boardwalk and those things that I think we've come accustomed to defining how we perceive the world. There are so many other observations and experiences that could be incorporated into people's lives so that it's a natural evolution for them to be involved in how can we actually make these momentous achievements around truth and reconciliation. So changing our mindset, changing our worldview, changing the environment, I think those kinds of things are things that we encourage people to do on the National Day Truth and Reconciliation. But there are formal events that you can find out more about online and through the Government of Canada websites, through the Chiefs of Ontario website, other websites, Indigenous events. You can find those. So I encourage people to check it out. Check out a lot of those information bases. There's a lot of things that can happen, but we want people to recognize the relationship that we have with our Mother the Earth and all of creation, and how we all should be helping to look after all of those spirits out there.
Those are great additions. Anything else further, Alex, on that point?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Chief Sayers, for bringing this important message. And we hope that those watching will take the time to reflect on September 30th and be active participants in that. And that could be something as simple as wearing an orange shirt. But I would encourage everyone to follow along with the websites that Chief Sayers suggested, and we'll be sure to provide that with everybody. So thank you very much, and Miigwech.
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 Yeah. Yes, Chief. Chief, also on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Innovation Center and all of our staff at the Innovation Center, I truly appreciate your thoughts and words. They will have impact and they will be shared.
Thank you all. And thank you for whoever's watching. Thank you for your time. Miigwech.